Hello and welcome to the Predictable B2B Success podcast brought to you by Sproutwith.com. I am Vinay Koshi, and you, more importantly, are a business owner and executive that is passionate about growing their business to fulfill its true potential, which is why I interview founders and experts like our guest today, David Ledgerwood, to uncover an aspect of how they go about doing that in their own business and that of others. David, in thinking about our conversation today, I thought of Mrs. Carlisle. A couple of years ago, Mrs. Carlisle spent about $13,000 to install a hydronic heating system, but she hasn't serviced her boiler since then. Every time the service department calls her to arrange an annual service for $164, she politely refuses. The service agent usually pushes back a little, explaining about voiding the warranty, energy efficiency, safety, avoiding unwanted emergency repairs and call-out fees. But his rationale falls on deaf ears. Mrs. Carlisle says she'll give them a call if and when the boiler breaks down. It seems to me that the customer's worldview is not aligned with that of the service department, and yet everything that they have to say to Mrs. Carlisle speaks to their own worldview, not to the customer's heart. David, from your experience, would you recommend spending the time to make her buy, or work out why she doesn't and what story she really wants to hear?
Oh, absolutely. I want to get to know Ms. Carlisle. She is the ideal client for me. So this is a challenge. So I want to know what makes her tick.
Yep.
You know, it's time to find out what is the story here. And yeah, I'd be interested to follow through on that call.
Certainly. And that would seem to make sense to me as well, especially given that she's made this huge investment in the hydronic heating system itself.
So Ms. Carlisle, you know what? I agree with you. I don't like to spend money either. I would not spend extra money. I wouldn't have somebody come out and do that. If I haven't serviced my HVAC in 14 years. I don't know when it's going to break down. I know it's going to cost me $10,000. Tell me your story, because I bet you agree with me.
So, now, David, you are the managing director of Ad10, and from what I make out, you have had quite a bit of experience. Everything from a bit of programming with PwC through to getting into the publishing side of things, startups, and I believe this is your 13th startup, if I'm not mistaken.
This is, I hope it's lucky 13. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've had a good time. I started as a coder. I loved coding. It was magnificent. I felt like I was almost like the poet of computers when I could code. And I just found that I also knew business things. I was interested in business things. I wanted to start businesses. And I came just before, you probably can relate to this. Maybe I came just before the idea that anybody could be an entrepreneur and you could do startups. It wasn't even a thing when I was in college. You know, nobody told you about that. So I went into the big consulting world and I bounced around and did my Fortune 500, you know, paid my dues. And I learned some things. I'm glad I did that. But then just ultimately, I just said, I want to work for myself. And there was a couple of catalysts to that. And I quit my job and I moved to a different city. And I started doing startups, and I was really bad at it. And I had to learn how to do sales because I hired a bunch of people and I thought, if you build it, they will come. And they didn't. And, and I had lots of expenses. So I learned how to sell. And after that, I just kept selling. And I found out people like making money, and I'm good at making people money. So let's keep doing that.
That makes a lot of sense. So from what I gather, Ad10 helps B2B technology companies with lead to sales execution.
Yes,
correct.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, especially services companies. We think of a tech-enabled services company, which is now all of them post-COVID. We started before COVID. Right before COVID. I like to start businesses right before the economy implodes globally. I'm good at that. I learned how to do that in the last financial meltdown and did it again. And obviously we didn't know that was going to happen, but we had a supposition that everybody could sell everything remotely, and let's do that. And that message didn't really resonate until 2020. Everybody all of a sudden needed to sell everything remotely. And so that was a good thing for us. Not to say that the pandemic was a good thing. At least we were able to align with the zeitgeist at the time. And yeah, we just looked at it and we said, my theory after many startups and mentoring startups and doing consulting and all that was, no founder wakes up in 3 o'clock in the morning and looks at the ceiling and thinks, they don't think anything except I need more sales.
Mhm.
Like, revenue is king, and you should do all the other things. You should think about all the other things that you could do. And there's a lot of functions to running a business, but the reality is that nobody wakes up in the middle of the night and worries about anything except having more revenue. They don't really worry about reducing costs. They don't really worry about their people. They don't worry about things like, so I want to sell more revenue. Let's do that. All I want to do is close money for people. And we built a business around that. And it turns out that's a weird kind of business. It made sense to me, but there are not a lot of essentially rev ops and closers as a service. So we just invented the thing that I wanted, and it turned out that was valuable to people. so here we are. And it was an accidental thing. It just happened. I had a supposition in my head, and I imagined what the spreadsheet would look like, but I never actually built it. And thankfully it turned out to be right. So
from what I understand, you essentially help these companies go from 6 figures to mid 7 figures. Would that be correct?
Yeah. So a weird thing that happens so I've only done services companies, when I'm an entrepreneur, and a weird thing that I noticed happen over and over again was, in a B2B services company, you would have the founders that would be able to bootstrap and really work sales up into that mid 6-figure kind of zone, and they would always plateau right there. It would flatten out. And the reason was that at that point, that founder needed to think about, do I want to do sales all the time, or do I want to be an operator? Do I want to run my business, be CEO? Most of them want to be CEO. They want to run a business. They want to scale, and they have to exit that sales seat. And so that's an opportune time for us to come in. So that's exactly what we do. Let's come and build a scalable revenue operation and start closing deals and take over sales from that founder. That's a very difficult thing to do. Founders at that point had typically only be given the option of, let's hire an SDR, or let's hire a college grad and teach them how to sell, or let's hire a VP of sales and they'll get things done, or somebody with a Rolodex. And there's all these sort of weird options that ultimately they fail because you don't have a revenue program. You have not thought about, how do I scale revenue, and how do I actually get the things out of my head? So when you're a founder at that point, you are a uniquely skilled individual who has all the tacit knowledge of the beginning of that business, sort of up to $500,000 in sales. But it is a confounding position because you cannot figure out how to scale past that and build a revenue program that scales that next 10x. So the fun way to say 10x was add 1 0. This was, I'd like to say, it would just a smart shower thought that I came up with this idea, and I said, all we want to do is add 1 0, the deal size to the revenue size to all the sort of the close rate, right? And you're just like, let's do that. And my partner and I backed out from that supposition, and it's been fun. We get to, if I boil our vision down to one thing, it's that, like, I want to work with founders and I want to make sure they never have to worry about cash flow again, because I had startups where I had to be like, how the hell am I going to make payroll next Friday? And I mean, that is a miserable feeling where you're just sick to your stomach. And so let's put people in a position where they never have to think about cash flow. And that's a little bit of an exaggeration.
Certainly.
Of course, you should always think about cash flow. I hope you're always thinking about cash, but let's give you 60, 90, 100 days of cash in the bank so that we can scale based on revenue. So I'm a very passionate bootstrapper. I want to enable other people to do that. And the way to do that is we've got to grow and scale revenue. And ultimately, the business that got you to 500 grand is not the business that gets you to 5 million. And that's the business we want to build. And God willing, you're able to go from 5 to 50, and we're probably not the people to help with that. I legitimately do not know what to do. So we exist in that little slice of the universe, and we're really good at it. So yeah.
What would you say is your personal area of strength given your journey to date?
I enjoy being on calls. I like to make deals.
Mhm.
I think I am a generalist, and so I can talk about a lot of different things relative to business and interest levels and such. So I am definitely a salesperson, which requires someone who is like my partner, who is highly focused and actually gets things done. So my personal area of strengths is having ideas, talking about stuff, starting things. And if you are that person and you're that founder, sales persona, you probably should surround yourself with good operators, because you get nothing done and you never follow up. So don't be
Okay.
that.
Though I'm curious, what would you say in that area of strength is something that businesses don't know but should?
Yeah. So I think that when I talk to a lot of founders, like, they're very procedural and they want to talk all the time about features. Here's all the
Mhm.
things we do. And I sincerely believe that what we try to teach people and what they're missing, the area of strength, is just to understand, sit in that customer's shoes, the empathy of being that person that you're trying to sell to. And they really only want a couple of things. They probably want to make money, or they want to make more profit, or it's not that complicated. And so
Mhm.
I think that, and I do it too, but I think people get too focused on features, too focused on the special sort of sauce of, I built my startup and this is my baby and it has many, it's very pretty. And I don't think that's true. No one cares about that. It's just what's in it for them.
Yeah.
And being able to discern that, I think, is really important. Knowing what's the next question to ask. I
Hmm.
think that's a skill that, yes, I have, and I try to teach other people to have it. So
Certainly. Now, when you talk about sales operations, at least in my mind, it conjures up a whole gamut of things. So I'm curious, how would you define sales operations?
yeah, and people, it's interesting. It used to be sales ops, and
Yeah.
we all knew what that was. And all of a sudden it became rev ops, and that was cooler. So let's call it rev ops, right?
Okay.
So just revenue operations and just rev ops. It's kind of like dev ops in development, but
Yeah.
like it's rev ops. And so I can tell you what we call it. And we think about that is that if a person like me, we call a sales leader, and a sales leader ought to be on and maximize time on calls.
Mhm.
And so what can we take off of the sales leader in all the things that need to happen in order to turn a call into a signed contract?
Mhm.
That's what I think is rev ops. And so you got a lot of proposals, and you got email follow-ups, and you've got all kinds of different touch points, and you've got proposals, contracts, statements of work,
Mhm.
back and forth, answering questions, objection handling on email, sending text messages, you name it. We think of that as the ops part because it's
Mhm.
very procedural.
Yeah.
Can you keep your sales closers on calls as much as possible? So everything that isn't them being on a call is the
Mhm.
ops part.
Certainly.
And if you pair those people together, a closer with an ops maniac, those are the things that really get it done. We're expensive, difficult people. You don't
Yeah.
want us trying to do paperwork. We suck at that. So find somebody who's really good at that and put them on that job. And
Yeah.
that's, I think, what's made it successful for us.
Would you say that there is a difference between sales enablement and sales operations or rev ops?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Sales enablement is the collection of materials that helps your salespeople, salespersons make the case
Mhm.
for the sale relative to the pile of objections that they are getting. So sales enablement materials, for example, would be case studies, nice handout materials, rate cards, all the things that say, if I can answer a particular objection with a piece of information or material, that's what I call sales enablement. And that's why you see
Mhm.
sales enablement tools, it's a high spot, things of that nature, right? And you pull those together and you can get information to the sales department or salespersons to answer those particular objections. Sales ops is going to be the actions, the
Mhm.
actual things that happen between a sales call and a closed deal. So paperwork and all the things there, and critically
Certainly.
important. Yeah.
Yeah. Terrific. David, uh, you talked about having the systems and the people in place and trying to maximize keeping people on calls and getting that revenue coming in. That would entail, at least in my mind, that there needs to be more of a managerial type ability to lead this unit, if you will. Would that be right? And does that person really need to have a good grasp of the kinds of people that would be a good fit for this particular situation and the roles and responsibilities?
Certainly that's what we would provide, right? If you look at, and I can only know this from our service, and where we are not the types where, let's say you're already a X million dollar company and you've got 5, 6, 7, 8 different reps and you've got a sales ops department, and you clearly would need sales leadership in that context. Many of the companies we walk into, we're the only sales folks. So yes, you need that management. And so I can tell you the way that it rolls out from our perspective is we have myself and my partner, which is ops and sales lead, and then a dedicated duo that is the map or sort of copy of that, which is an ops and a sales lead. And so that 4-person team is what a client would get when they buy to work with us. And so in fact, there is quite a bit of leadership and management on that. So you're buying a 4-person revenue department, or a division, if you will, if you work with us. The answer is yes. Yeah, you unquestionably need to manage, which I find mostly to be a quality assurance type of position. So for example, we have a team and they do the calls, they produce a proposal, and then we'll pass it through several layers of QA and read over and, make sure that, have we nailed this? Record every call, make sure all the right questions are being asked, make sure the objections are being handled properly, make sure that the proposal answers the particular needs of that customer, and make sure that what we're proposing is accurate to the costing or packages or some kind of sort of calculator to figure out what all that is. There's an enormous amount of work that goes to a high fidelity sales organization. You've probably worked in a place, listeners have probably worked in a place where salespeople just sell whatever they want and good luck, go ahead and deliver that. And when there's massive difference between those things and everything is a custom statement of work, what you're actually doing is adding an outrageous amount of friction to the business, and friction is cost. So we're driving down profitability from those things. So the objective to drive up revenue should also be met with the objective of driving up gross profit. Like the cost to deliver that service should in fact drop while you're scaling. So we think of it not just as revenue growth, we think of it revenue scale. And I think that's what's really important there.
Okay. And just going back to the example we started with, Mrs. Carlisle, who installed the hydronic heating system and didn't want the annual service. In such instances where you have a service department trying to sell her that, is it important, at least from a sales point of view, to always be on the lookout for customers and their worldview, as opposed to coming in with the perspective of, this is my client's worldview that I represent, and we're going to try and make it fit in with whatever clients come before us?
I see many companies trying to do that. And I always think, no matter what, like you are not the customer. And so if the customer is giving you an objection of some sort, they're either trying to get you off the phone just to leave me alone. And so it's like, why are they saying no? What is that really about in that context? And there's always a reason that someone is saying one thing, but they actually mean something else. And so like that, if you can build that trusted advisor sort of persona, I don't know why she's saying no, but I can say that she's been trained one way or another to object in a way that will be rejecting this sales approach. So it's obviously the wrong approach. And you just have to discover that over time and develop that relationship. But you get a lot of that script-based selling. Hi, Vinay. This is Legend. I just wanted to let you know that for a limited time right now, we're going to be able to have the service plan. If you buy every month, and it's just people are inured to that. They don't want to handle that anymore. But what I might be able to say is, hey, you have the system. It's working great. I expect it to work great indefinitely. And there's a 10% chance that you might have an issue with that. And let me show you what that would cost. And here's the question. It's like, so the weighted average on that, 10% times this amount of money. Do you want to buy the insurance plan essentially against the failure of your system? And if you don't, that's fine. You can handle the self-insurance of that if you have this kind of cash position. If you don't have this kind of cash position, then you might want to consider this. So by all means, if you want to handle this by yourself, go ahead and do it. That's okay. And if you don't want to handle that by yourself, just understand that at some point you might get hit with a $5,000 bill at one point. If that's untenable to you in your financial situation, I recommend you buy this plan. And so that just makes it easier there. So.
Okay. Very much question-based abilities, seeking to understand the customer's worldview.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious, as you roll out your processes, I'm assuming that there are certain metrics or KPIs that you would use to track your overall performance of sales ops or rev ops. Could you walk us through what you focus on?
Sure. And I want everybody to remember that we work primarily on B2B services companies. And so this may not be the right thing for everybody. I'm always very clear about that. So what we have found to be most effective is we want to maximize the number of calls we do. So let's get people on the calls. The number of people that we send when someone schedules a call, the most important thing we have found that we can do to drive up the show rate, which is people that, so like, you don't want people to no show. You want them to schedule a call and they actually show up. We send a pre-call sequence, that's 3 emails, whereby we are educating them prior to the call. And these are the 3 major questions that people want to know before they talk to us. That drives up the show rate. So we know that to be true. On the call, we have a certain, not script, but a certain path we want to follow, whereby we can ask enough questions such that within 24 hours, we can make a proposal. The call to proposal ratio ought to be very high, almost 1-to-1. There's some calls that you're just like, okay, this is a joker who got through the screen and we're not going to be able to do this. Let's figure a 1-to-1 call to proposal ratio. Very high. That does not, all those are going to close. So then we look at the ratio of call to close, which in a services business, if you can max out in the 20s, you're going to be like fantastic, right? So we want to drive, because we want a high number of calls and we want a high number of proposals. What we're really looking at is call to close. How many people accept the proposal and ask for a contract? And we want the contract to close ratio to be nearly 1-to-1. This has been the formula that we work. You're going to have 80% of proposals are not going to be accepted. Just keep putting the proposals out there. We want the contract to close ratio to be nearly 100%. And we want the call to close ratio to be somewhere in the low 20% range. That tends to be, if we can optimize for that, the best way. I have a bunch of videos where I sort of rage against the machine of sales goals at companies. Again, the size, like, so B2B services companies up to, 5 million. I think sales goals are stupid. It just doesn't make any sense. I can tell you what my sales goal is. I want to close 100% of every dollar that walks in the door. We will fall miserably short of that goal, but that still is the goal, right? So like setting any other quota is just silly, because when I walk in companies of that size, what I find is our sales goal is this. And what it turns out to be is we want to spend X dollars. So if we back that out to say our sales goal must be able to generate X dollars, that's not actually a realistic sales goal based on any ratio that makes any sense. So what I say is, look, our goal is, let's stop talking about quotas, stop talking about goals. The goal is we want to close 100% of every dollar that we possibly can close. The fact is that we're going to fall miserably short of that, but let's close 22% of the calls that show up. And that's going to still maximize the dollars. I also look at like the average contract size, actually ACV, average contract value, ticket size. People use different words for that, but That's an important metric because when we walk in, we typically find that if we package properly and sell properly, we can raise the ACV about 30% in most cases. So what you want to do is drive up the close rate, drive up the ACV. The combination of those two things is in fact more money. Take that money, don't put it in your pocket, Mr. Founder, pump it back into the funnel, drive more meetings with those same ratios, gets you more, revenue growth. So that over 2 years ought to get you that 10x that you're looking for.
So you're very much focused on the metrics around the sales process as opposed to things like customer lifetime value and cost of acquisition, things of that nature.
That's correct. Yeah. And so two different things there. So I would say of like LTV, I expect to be from our world, we are the bottom of half of the funnel. So meeting to close, so SQL to customer. Cost of acquisition, I expect to be top of funnel. Now we will gladly work with folks on their marketing and make sure that you're doing the right things. But cost of acquisition goes at the top of funnel. So not my world, but I'll come back to that. LTV is effectively a retention metric. You're saying if I have a really good CX, if I have a really good customer experience and support and a product and like upsell capabilities, account managers, all those things, existing client management, I ought to be able to drive up that LTV. That doesn't mean that you have that. So our world is narrow here. LTV is down here, and what is it? Customer acquisition cost, CAC, is at the top. Now, that said, I'm adamant about a thing I call sales informed marketing. So I often find that a lot of companies are doing marketing and bringing in leads that are marketing qualified leads that actually are not remotely useful from a sales perspective, and that disconnect of sales and marketing. Here's how I think that companies can resolve that. And this is what we do. So we record every call that we do. A sales call is a one-to-one with someone that we think we ought to be able to get. It's a one-to-one meeting, and questions and answers, and we ought to be able to turn this into a customer.
Right.
Every time that prospect asks a question, it's either a question about the features and benefits, or it's an objection. And so we actually have an analyst go through every recorded call, every single thing. Like if a sentence ends with a question mark, put it in the database, tag it, log it, understand it, and normalize it based on any other question that's been asked on any other call. And after a series of 20, 30, 40, 50 calls, you start to get an idea of here is what people want to know when they show up for these calls. So a sales call is a one-to-one conversation. That's very low leverage.
Yeah.
I can educate people on that sales call. However, what if in our marketing, we could educate people relative to that thing that they all want to know? What are we know this now because we actually know when the people get on the call, here's what they ask. If we count those and we log those and we tag them relative to a sort of objection taxonomy that we have, we know exactly what people show up wanting to know and in what quantity of those people. So we have a weighted average relative to here are the things that people need to know. Take those, feed them back to marketing, say, listen, here are your content prompts. People want to show up and they want to know these things already. Marketing, you have the ability to reach people 1,000 to 1. That is a much higher leverage education point. Let's tune all of our marketing to those questions in order. Here are the content prompts necessary to do that. That alone aligns marketing and sales from a sort of intelligence standpoint. And if you do this, it's a ton of work. It's just a slog. There's no other way to do this except go through every single line of every call. And that's what we do. But when you do that, your MQLs will start to be more educated. And when they show up for calls, and guess what? I talked about that pre-call sequence, 3 emails. Guess what's in the 3 emails? The top 3 questions that we have identified, and we tune and tune and tune. So all of a sudden people start showing up for calls, better and better educated, your close rate goes up. Because they would have self-selected out of the funnel if they're not the right people, because we already educated them not to be there. I did not expend expensive sales time on a one-to-one education for somebody who shouldn't have been there in the first place. And as you do that process indefinitely, it will get better and you'll close more, and the cost and, so the ACV will go up.
Mhm. Are there any other steps that you would recommend people follow as they think about fleshing out their sales ups?
I definitely think packaging is really important. So
Mhm.
one thing we find is that people make it way too complicated to buy from them.
Right.
So try to find a way to, I am a fan of the 3-package type of methodology. If you were to look at our website, you would see that.
Mhm.
Name them something,
Yeah.
put a specific line item worth of things in there,
Mhm.
and sell that. So if you go to our website, you have the expert package, the expand package, and the experience package. And that is not a thing we spend a lot of time on. We just said, hey, it'd be cool stuff started with X. Let's sell that. So trying to do that for every client, you can't always do it. There are some things where a client will, we have a variable sort of set of things that we sell. And it's better to think of it as like, how do we enable almost like a calculator? So the rep or the sales lead that's on the call can actually be plugging in specific variables and come up with a quote right there at that time. So we may have to custom build those, but the basic most important thing is just make it easier to buy from you. And the biggest lie you can ever tell about your business is we customize every approach for every single client that walks in the door. All that means is you can't scale.
Yeah.
And it's like an epic lie that is you are chasing money. You will take any client that has any check that they can write, and which means you are not niched. You are not going to scale. You can't deliver that thing. There's an incredible amount of shadow work and friction that you're embedding into your operation. And it is the recipe to not be profitable. So don't do that once you reach this point. By all means, bootstrap, take every crappy client you can, get that early money, and then start firing them and start scaling the company. That's the point that we like to work on.
Certainly. Okay. I'm also curious. I know a lot of people talk about best practices, but I find it a bit of a difficult term to digest. I'd rather go with good practices because
good enough.
Yeah. But are there good practices that you would advocate for companies to adopt?
I think it's absolutely. A good practice is that you need to have CRM discipline and hygiene. It's just record the calls, take notes, write down your processes. What is the next right thing at any point? And anybody, if you've gotten far enough that you have a deal board, sort of pipeline managed in your CRM, like, and they all have different things, Pipedrive, HubSpot, Close.io, they all have that board. I guarantee you that every single one of the people listening have some kind of nurture column, or like this, what we call like the black hole of death in the middle of your pipeline, all the people that you can't close. And they go in this huge column of crap. They've been there for a year. Like, for God's sake, clean out your pipeline. So there's no such thing as a nurture stage. If you don't know the exact right thing that should happen there, close the deal. You lost already. And if I see anything, it's that over and over again. The myth of the nurture. You will not nurture. Let's be honest. Like, most people have 150 tasks that they haven't looked at in their CRM, and they're all red and they're all late. Be honest with yourself about what you're actually going to do to follow up. And for God's sake, close the deal, stick that content on your marketing list, and at least send them a quarterly email that just says something and remind them you're alive. But take it off the deal board, because it's the mental space that's killing you. You're not going to make any deals based on that. So remove the nurture stage and be honest with yourself that you are not going to nurture that client.
Certainly. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm hearing that trust and rapport is key, and really that you are limiting the amount of value that you deliver to a prospect to just one call.
We want to. Yeah, if you'd want to. Look, my favorite thing in the world is a one-call close. It's not always going to happen, but yeah, you want to establish like a bulletproof value proposition that is so good that at least people are saying, even if it's not the right time right now, I know you're the guy I'm going to call when I need that thing. And I'm not saying you can turn everything into a one call close, but shouldn't that be the objective?
Mhm.
Right? Yes. If that's the paradigm of things, just like I said, look, my sales goal is close all the money.
Yeah.
I won't get there. But if my goal is to design a system that is so good and a pitch that's so good, then in the first call, people say, that makes so much sense. And I want that thing, even though I can't buy it right now. Like that's going to
Mhm.
stick in their brain. And I mean, so yeah, that's what to happen. And then I can end with, by all means, call me when you're ready. I will be your trusted advisor. If there is a vendor that I know that's better than us for your particular situation, I will tell you that. I will personally introduce you to our competitor to get you the better thing. And if you mean that, that does establish a lot of trust. And I do mean that, because I know I'm only going to close at best a quarter of these people, but people change jobs every 2 years. So if Ledge is the guy, or whoever is the person that helped them out, they're going to move jobs by and large on average.
Yeah.
Now they're in my network. I make sure I add them on LinkedIn. I make sure my LinkedIn network knows what I'm doing. 2 years from now, there's probably going to need the thing, and they're going to be working for a company that has more budget. So you really have to just have this idea that it's one big organic system, and absolutely create the system where people trust you and you're the guy. So people call me in to give advice about, hey, I'm doing this thing and I can't possibly afford what you guys are doing, but can you just give me feedback? Absolutely. I take all those calls. I give as much as I can, because eventually that person will have money and I want them to call me. So,
yeah. The reason for asking is that there are some people who buy into the philosophy that you give as much value as you possibly can, and that could take 30 calls, for example. But really, if you're, from what I'm hearing, you're developing a filter that allows you to very quickly help people decide whether this is the right solution for them. And if so, help them out with that. Otherwise, let's be in touch, and somewhere down the track, we might connect again to do business.
By all means, what the most expensive thing is for a sales organization is maybe, or later, or send me some information, or any of these things. I am a firm believer in get to the no as fast as you can, because at least in our world, the most expensive thing in the world is a block on my calendar. And we have got to make sure that that asset is leveraged to the max. And so please say no, because I need to stop wasting time on this. This time is so valuable, and I could be having a call with the next person that might say yes. So I do try to design a pitch that gets to the point of just, does this or does this not fit for you? And I'm not going to chase you. So please, prospect, tell me what is the right time to follow up with you where you're going to be serious about this offer. If I send you these materials that you're asking for, are you going to read them? Because if you're not, it's not even worth me sending this thing to you. And so I'll take that contrarian sort of position. I'll say, Vinay, I hear what you're saying. And let me tell you something. 90% of the people that I send the materials to that you're asking for never even open them. Are you going to be the guy that opens those materials and actually reads them? Because if you're not, it's cool. Just tell me. And almost everybody will then say, oh yeah, I will. And the interesting thing about one of the top 6 psychological triggers of sales is consistency, right? So psychological consistency says if somebody says they're going to do a thing, they want to stay true to their word. So I will get you to tell me, if I waste my time sending stuff to you, you better open those things and read them, because I'm going to know. It's amazing that people still don't know that, like, I can tell exactly what you click on from the email, and I can tell you which pages you read of the thing. I'm amazed that people don't understand that the statistics exist for this. But so you just try to, it's a game. I just think of it as, some people say, is it hard to get no's, or You get tired of being rejected. I love being rejected. You know, one of my sales mentors was, I eat no's for breakfast, you know, and I think that's right. It's just like the joy of that win when you can get somebody a thing, and it's valuable. I legitimately know that I sold somebody something that is going to make a difference in their life. That's important to me. And for somebody that like it legitimately won't make a difference, I want to get them off the phone and stop imagining that this is right for you, because it's not. You don't have money, and or you're not ever going to do this. So why are like I don't need more friends. Do you need more friends? Let's get off the phone.
Ari Galper, I don't know if you've heard of him. He wrote the book Unlock the Sales Game, and he's got this process called the one call sales. And he was a big advocate of saying that I don't send people any material.
Right.
Everything they need to know will be answered on the call, and they can make a decision based on the call, but no other value is required.
Yeah, Chris Voss is the same way. So like how to make a decision quickly, never split the difference is his book. And I love that. It's just like, why do you need more material? I just gave you the full thing. You just told me it was valuable. If it's not valuable, you lied to me. You know, so, you don't want to lie to me, Vinay. I don't know. And some people think of it's the hard sell or the used car salesman and all these things, but I don't want to be too salesy. I hear that from founders all the time. Look, do you believe in your thing or not? Because if you believe in your thing, then you should try to get people to put that in, because it's going to add significant value. I believe in our thing. We will get you. If I sign you up as a client, we're going to bust our butts to get you 10 times the return. That's just normal. And if it doesn't work out that way, we'll fire ourselves. Like, I'm disgusted if we don't get people a lot of money. I just want a little piece. So, and I think if you believe in that, like, sales is easy.
Yeah.
And so we only sign up clients where there's legitimate, and I have some videos about this, which align your values with what you do business with. And we won't do snake oil businesses and clients. We'll only do things that I go like, that really matters. More often than not, people that we end up being our clients are people that we paid for their services, said, that's really good. Can we sell your thing? So there's an integrity to sales that I will sell like a maniac if it's a thing that I believe will get people value. And if we don't, we probably shouldn't have touched that in the first place.
I'm also curious, when you were starting with a particular client, do you really jump into sales straight off the bat, or do you spend some time acquiring the data, which you alluded to a little bit earlier, to fine-tune your approach?
So we don't book people, and so like we book ahead. So if we were to have, for example, if we were to work for your company, I would say what I'd like to start doing is working with you in August on, retainer. But today, June 9th, what I want you to do is, you're still doing your sales. So record every call you do and start sending them over to us in a Dropbox folder or something of that nature. So we work off the clock. We're going to consume all of those. We're going to put an analyst on it. We're going to record all those questions and objections. Give us everything you got. We will consume every piece of information we possibly can. So by the time we come on, that 20, 25 calls would have been consumed and grokked into our sort of database.
Right.
And so do we start selling right away? Yes. Do we suck at it right away? Also, yes. And so I always tell clients, you should expect there's going to be a little dip from that founder-based selling. Like, you have tacit knowledge that you have generated over all those years, the answer to every question. No matter what happens, we're going to suck a little bit. That 60-day arc there, the closest we ever got was like the first sale in 23 days. The worst we ever got was like a first sale in 68 days. And so you just don't know. But what we do find is that at that point, just where we reach the trough of sorrow, oh, is this working? All of a sudden, 3 or 4 sales drop and we go, oh, everything's fine. And so it's just so weird. It's a weird thing. And so people think, can you sell my thing? Yes. And we will bust our butts to learn every single thing we can. And it'll still be hard. It's a tremendous amount of work. I think of RevOps as like, we're running around this mountain, pushing boulders up like 1 inch at a time, and all the boulders need to move. And eventually it's, yeah, it really works. And there's a great scalable system. It starts to really click. But there's a lot to do. It's an incredible amount of work. So the reason that we do a retainer plus commission type of model is because we get crushed at the beginning. We take a loss on every client at the beginning, and it's a beatdown. But eventually we make the money back together. You make 10 times the money, we make 1.
So a large part of it is also, I would think, reverse engineering their sales processes and the data flows. Would that also be a correct assumption?
Well, to the extent that there are data or sales processes.
True.
Data. Most of the time we walk into a total disaster that is customized. Every single call is of the
right. Okay.
Sort of, chicken with its head cut off. But because remember, what you could do to get to $500,000 is not the same business. It's like we train people like you are building a new business, a new operation to get to that 5 million mark.
Yeah.
It just isn't the same thing. And I think every order of magnitude change in the business is just, we're building a new business. So the difference with that business of $500,000 to 5 million, it's just what got you here won't get you there.
Yeah.
You can't keep acting like in this unscalable disaster kind of way. So if you are a services business doing $500,000 a year, you are in like the top 96% of the universe. Yes, well done. Like you are doing an amazing job. You have achieved a thing, but it isn't going to keep going. You can stay there forever and keep being a mess. But if you aspire to be 10 times more than that, then you're basically starting over. And we work with founders who go, I go, listen, if you're the person that wants to go scale that operation, because you have to deliver, you got to operate, you got to finance, you have to do customer success, customer experience. You probably have to finance a whole bunch of marketing. If you want to do all those things, we'll build revenue for you. And if you don't, then don't do that. Keep selling and be a $500,000 company. And that's fine. Like you put all that money in your pocket.
Yeah.
Don't spend it on scale. So you have to really want to be that next level.
Certainly.
And it could be a horrible idea. If you just want to be a lifestyle company,
that's
keep
fine
doing
too.
what you're doing. You're going to put 100 grand in your pocket. Everything's fine. You're going to go on forever. So stay on the treadmill. You're not going to sell it for anything.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Now, if you want to be a company, the services company is going to sell for 1.5 times revenue, maybe. If you have a hot brand, maybe 2 times. So if you want life-changing money, you got to grow to be a 3 to 7, $10 million type of company. And that's okay. There's a tiny selection of the world that wants to work with us. And that's the beautiful thing about a niche.
Yeah.
Like you either know you're that person or you're not.
Yep.
And 99.9% of the world isn't. And we're thrilled with that.
Certainly. I've got to ask you this question. I'm sure the listeners going, David, what are the best tools that you would recommend for sales ops?
So we reluctantly became a HubSpot partner. We love HubSpot, the tool, but I'm not like waving the flag of you should do that. I just, every time we come into a company and they're on one of the other lesser CRMs or something, it's just, the reality is that that's the best tool that you can get at that price point, and it's too expensive and you're going to hate yourself for a little while. But I can tell you that if you really want to operate a really badass automated sales and RevOps, so HubSpot's probably the game. We're big Asana users. We're big Confluence users, Atlassian Confluence.
Yeah.
Highly recommend that. It's a fantastic tool. The sexy new one that everybody likes is Notion. I don't like Notion. I have to tell you, I just think Atlassian is awesome. Google Suite, or what do they call it now? Workplace or G Suite, Workspace. I don't even, I can't keep track. They rebrand the thing every 15 minutes, but Slack. So it just, those are the key tools there. But I would like to tell you there was something that I could recommend other than HubSpot. I'm not like, I'm not just like waving the flag, but the reality is that it's a great tool, and
Yeah.
it's expensive and you'll hate yourself for a little while, but you probably should use it. So, and we're a partner. So if you want to work through us, we'll get a little kickback on that.
David, is there other aspect, or another aspect at the very least, of sales ops or revenue ops that we quite haven't covered but should?
It's just, I think the main thing is there's no easy answer. It just takes time.
Mm-hmm.
Building a system takes time. It's just answering, like doing all the things. It's just, I think about that metaphor of running around the mountain, pushing a rock uphill, and it's 15 different rocks. And so run around the mountain and push the rock up 1 foot, and then run to the next rock and push it up 1 foot. And what you will find is that there's no such thing as just rev ops. There's scale, and all the things need to move. And one lesson we learned early on was that we could be magnificent at closing more deals and scaling sales. Wow, people made more money. Oh, guess what? Like the total operations, delivery, customer success, like customer, everything collapsed. So we sold the company almost out of business. Like our client, we almost broke them because we sold so well and we built such a great revenue. And it was like independent of, oh, like they can't deliver that. So we quadrupled their like close rate, and we crushed their delivery operations. They can't even finance it. So you can break finance, because like, how do I hire more people when I don't have, I can't collect the revenue until I deliver the thing. So cash flow timing. And the one thing you learn is like business is like this holistic system, and it all has to go together. And so we can come in and talk all day long about, yay, more revenue. We're going to break you if we do that too well. And that's the thing I think people should look at and like really understand the holistic systems of operations, finance, marketing, sales, delivery, whatever, like it all goes together. And we have this, I don't know, maybe business school inspired ridiculous notion that those things aren't all, part of the same system. It's like the circulatory system is not related to the, I don't know, the pulmonary system in the body, right? Like it's one body, like that's your business. And you're going to kill it if you try to scale one thing and not the other.
The rest.
Yeah. And so just think that even if you can't see it, when you're changing one thing, you're changing all the things. And so the funny thing that happens to us is often getting pulled in and say, hey, will you help us review our budget or P&L? And we're having a financing issue, and we have a cash flow timing issue. And it's like, wait, that's not sales. But it's because of the success in sales, and we broke all the other stuff. So as an entrepreneur, as a founder, I can tell you that's what we think about. And the funny thing that has happened is I can look at anybody all day long and say, when you reach $500 million in sales in the services business, this is exactly what's going to happen to you. And then one day I looked at our business. I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, why did we plateau at this particular spot? And it was the thing we tell everybody, why to hire us? It happened to us. Like, shit, we were right, but we knew the laws of physics, but that didn't mean that the apple was going to float up for us. It's just funny, right? Like we're all business people, and we try to just be honest and get stuff done and just try to scale. And it's hard, man. Business is hard, and just keep at it. So.
Excellent. David, if you were listening to this episode, what would you say is your top takeaway?
My top takeaway, I think if you're doing sales yourself as a founder, just be aware that you're going to hit this particular point and think of it. I know I'm going to get to the point where I need to make a choice. Do I want to sell or do I want to operate? And I really think that that's the core thing. And just be aware that's coming, because you can be on this like sort of mind trip about your business. Yeah, we're growing so fast. It's great. You will hit the wall there. Like I'm guaranteed. It's the law of physics. And so be aware of that. It's coming. for you. It's likely to happen somewhere in the middle six figures. You can't figure out how to scale, and you just know that's going to happen. You are not immune to that. And know that it happens to us, or the people who train other people on how to deal with it. It happens to us too. So, take that away and be prepared for that fun moment where you go, I don't know how to scale my business anymore, so I need help.
Yeah. David, if listeners are curious and wanted to find out more or connect with you, where would you recommend they head to?
I am on LinkedIn, David Ledgerwood. Always look me up there. Like all kinds of stuff that goes from our podcast and all kinds of blog posts and everything on my feed. And if you want to look at our company, it's add10, so ADD numeral 1 zero.co, not .com. I'm chasing that guy. I want that domain, but it is .co. add10.co. Check out our blog there, all kinds of stuff. The YouTube channel has all kinds of videos that repeat the types of lessons here. We have a knowledge base and a thing we call expert community, XPERT. You're welcome to join that. All B2B founders are welcome to join that. We do a monthly learning session mastermind. All the stuff is free. We have a whole knowledge base of email templates, everything. We give it all away. Like, just come and learn. We want people to be successful. And you can track us down on, any of those channels. We just want people to make more money. Come on down.
Brilliant. David, thanks so much for doing this.
Vinay, this was fun, man. Great questions. I appreciate it.